All right, so with our gorgeous Mr. B, so Bernie, ready, find it. So we're gonna warm up a little bit with some find its with orientation back to me, but I wanted to dive into a little bit with some more loose leash walking, also work a bit with like what's called leash pressure. And we're gonna dive into a little bit of a few other little novel skills too. I would love to work with some leave its with him as well. So I know some of the babes have taken puppy classes with me. Others have been doing other programs, which is perfectly fine. But you guys may find it really valuable to take maybe a class with him with me. I'm not saying you must, but a lot of times some of these skills can be really nice to practice with you guys, with him, and with the distractions of a classroom setting. Because then everybody in that classroom is working on similar skills, behavioral difficulties because of their teenage dogs. So this, nice job, sir. So it could be a great venue for extra rehearsal of what you'd love him to get good for the future. Absolutely no pressure. If your schedule is crazy and right now what works well is what you're rocking, perfectly okay. But I would recommend to keep me updated if there are questions or concerns when you are practicing, so we can make sure things are going in the direction you were hoping for. So with Mr. B, he's like eager beaver. So remember that jumping is just him being very excited for what we're going to work on and a little bit, maybe jazzed and has a lot of feelings. So sometimes when your puppies are a little eager beaver, a little nervous, the jumping can be part of that equation. So what I'm doing for Mr. Lovely is anytime he either reorients to me from these find its or distraction moments and heads back towards my bubble, be it by my leg or into my space, I want to feed for that engagement. So because if in the beginning we don't find the puppy coming and thinking coming towards us is really exciting or kind of cool, how are we possibly going to get this type of engagement later when we throw in distractions or something really challenging? So right now, you could be working him on the left or the right, whichever side feels comfortable. But again, like I mentioned a little earlier for Miss S, feed on the side you'd like him to be on. So if he's going to be working on the right side versus the left, feed for while he's by that side of your leg. You'll see that my rate of reinforcement, which is how many snacks he's getting within a few moments, is very kind of quick. So if you're ever feeling dizzy looking down at your babe, I know right now as I'm walking, I'm going in a circle and I'm looking down. If you tend to get really dizzy looking at your dog, I would recommend to pick a soft space where it's not too distracting for both of you. Like inside the home is perfect, but like head towards the end of your hall and look there versus looking down the whole time. So if let's say I was going to practice and let's pretend I'm in my hallway, I might go ahead and look towards the end of my hall, take a few steps with my dog while looking ahead, feed him still by my leg. So again, I'm still looking ahead. My dog, I don't care if he's on the left or the right. The main goal is that when he's next to me, that's where he's being fed. So you could swap and now you could be feeding on this side, but I'm not looking down the whole time if I'm finding that I'm getting dizzy. So it can be a lot of things to think about, like where's the dog, where's my hand, where's the snack. So take your time and work these dance moves where you feel safest and where the distraction level is much softer. So like right here, he's doing great. So ready, Bernie, come. Nice, what a smart boy. So you'll see that I do send him away. And on purpose, this helps your puppy learn that moving away could be fun, but also coming back into your space has a lot of great value. So I'm just gonna have another cough drop. So I'm always like promising I'm not eating dog snacks, though maybe some of them do look delicious, just kidding. So the cough drops is just because I'm blabbing and it's so dry in here with the heat on, because it's very chilly outside, but we wanna keep it somewhat cozy in here. And it's got not the greatest insulation, if any. So a lot of times I feel like I'm heating the outdoors, but that's all right. So Bernie, come. Yes, smart boy. So when it comes to loose leash walking, you'll see that a lot of times I start them off of their equipment. So he might be wearing his harness, the leash might be nearby, but I'm not always having both. I do like to rotate though. So if let's say, for example, I'm going to go ahead and grab for my gear. If grabbing for my leash starts to equal excitement, so like the jingle or whatever it might be, I like to go right into some find its once more. So you'll see that in the beginning, I tend to use certain skills, almost like my ABCs, to the beginning stages of other skills for down the road. So remember that your advanced skills are basic skills that have been mastered and refined. So a sit from 300 feet away is still a sit from 2 feet next to you. He's like, did you throw it? So remember that if you're building on your duration, your distraction level, and for example, let's say your distances, those are going to be things that you build up slowly as your foundation behaviors become more resilient and reliable. So I know his harness has a front and a back clip hookup. So if he gets a little excited, I'm just going to hang out with the gear, but I'm not really going to do anything with it. I'm just going to hold it. And we're just going to start practicing some of the skills we were just working on, but now I just have the gear in my hand. So if gear tends to equal like woohoo or oh my goodness, like we mentioned a little bit in the previous videos with him working with his harness, is I'd recommend to sometimes just have gear, and sometimes we put it on, sometimes we don't. The gear doesn't always equal we're going outside or we're going for a walk, because if so, then sometimes the gear can start to create a lot of really woohoo feelings. And in that situation, we might by accident be reinforcing the puppy that maybe we didn't really love. So I'm not saying to be mean to him or say no or get agitated when he gets excited, but maybe if he's a little bit wild and he's trying to mouth the gear, we could ask him for either a different behavior to do instead or some of these movement skills. So if being stationary doing a sit is too challenging when putting gear on, ready? We could try doing some find its, which is what I was doing when I went to grab for gear. So he doesn't feel that this is the target or I'm the target. Now instead the find its become the target. So it's a great way to diffuse some excitement off of you and the thing. And then maybe if he's getting softer, then we could pretend we could reach, and then I could feed him for that. So I'm not even clipping on, I'm just reaching. And then for him staying sort of comfortable, I feed for that response. If again, reaching was scary for him, I might start reaching, but without the gear in my hand. So sometimes you're gonna lower the criteria or change it up to help your puppy be comfortable. So let's say again, we're gonna get that little sit. I'm gonna go ahead and feed Mr. B for that board, very nice little sit position. I might give him a couple extras, so a little jackpot moment, so one after the other for being there. And then I might go and I'm gonna try and leash up the puppy. If let's say this equaled mouthing me or mouthing equipment, I would do this a few steps to make sure that the gear being put on doesn't equal we eat you or eat the gear. So now with my leash on, you would do the exact same practice you were doing prior. So with your leash, I like to hold my lead on the opposite side. So if I'm working my puppy on the right side, my leash is in my left hand or vice versa. So if this is weird for you, I also recommend to never wrap the leash around your wrist or around your wrist several times by wrapping the leash. So the reason behind that is, what if something's slippery or you need to let go for a safety reason? If it's all wrapped around you, I'm not saying we're trying to release our boys or girls into the roadway or get into trouble or whatever, but for safety reasons, you can actually hurt your shoulder, hurt your elbow, and dislocate or hurt your fingers and hurt your wrist if you're wrapping it around you. So your leash, for my guys, I like to, for example, take the loop of my leash, put my thumb through it, and then collect up the gear to where I'd like it. I take my first finger and put the lead through there, and then I close the whole thing around my hand. If you need more lead, you can also just hold it a little bit looser. So I like to have my leash. So I'm going to set him up where you can see him a little bit better. We'll do a little sitting position nearby. Ready? Sit. So like, see how the leash right now is kind of a little bit of an L or like a J, I mean. You want to have like a smiley face through your leash. So if, for example, leashes become somewhat tickly, there could be moments where your puppy does go to grab for gear. If the puppies are grabbing for gear a lot, it's more than likely they're overtired or overstimulated, and you need to work on something other than being attached to the leash for that time frame. Because if your puppy, out of frustration or overtiredness, they keep grabbing for gear and they rehearse it, they're gonna get really good at grabbing for equipment when they get frustrated or overwhelmed later. So with the handsome guy, my leash is again across my body, but I'm feeding him for being by the side of my leg. Nice. So when it comes to working with your puppies, if you're always going for the real world walk, oh my goodness, good sneezes. And sneezing, again, means your puppy's really excited and happy about what's going on. So a lot of times you'll hear sneezing during play or when you come home or when you're about to grab for a toy. So you can see Mr. B is really rocking some beautiful engagement with me. I don't care if he was looking at me or looking ahead. If, let's say, he does better when checking in, then of course feeding engagement is really beneficial. But for now, if you are mostly just getting loose leash walking where your puppy is next to you and being soft, I would feed for that beginning stage. If you're looking for engagement with eyes on you, that could be something you can build in later. Nice. So let's say, for example, when you're practicing with your puppy, they tend to pull because you're trying to go from point A to point B. The problem with trying to go for a real world walk and your babe doesn't have the skill set yet, it's almost like going for, let's say, a big ski slope and you barely even know how to put skis on. It's not a smart move to start at the highest level of difficulty when you barely have the skill set to know what to do. So your dog walks at a much faster gait than we do. They tend to want to sniff everything, which is super normal. So I'd make sure that you practice your leash skills in an environment that is not so overwhelming. So having a longer leash could also be a great way to include sniffy walks while then working a little bit of bounce back from the environment back to you. His saliva makes my snackies get stuck to my hands sometimes. Ready? So let's say your puppy tends to do a lot of pulling, which right now he's not. He's just excited. He's really loving working the snacks. So if your babes tend to do a lot of leash pulling, remember that pulling reinforces pulling. So it doesn't matter what piece of equipment you have on. Some pieces of equipment, though, do hurt the dog while they pull. So this is why I always recommend a body harness that your dog feels comfortable wearing, because especially a Y-shaped one that is non-restrictive. There are some brands that will shift and move and tighten and restrict movement to try to stop the pulling. But what ends up happening there is your babe eventually just pulls through that discomfort. So what I recommend to work on is what's called leash pressure. So this is not what you sometimes see online for other folks, is where you take a puppy that's making a mistake and you yank on them and you pop them or you jostle them with a leash jerk. I don't recommend it because it turns you into a jerk. So no worries if we've done it here and there, but I would recommend that if, for example, your puppy is struggling and they're pulling, they're either one, overwhelmed, don't understand what you'd prefer from them, and are sometimes actually flustered or struggling or too overexcited. So leash pressure should not be the puppy getting scared or startled by you yanking on equipment. I'm not a fan. But with your puppy in front of you, you're going to have your leash attached to their harness and you're going to do a little pull and you're going to feed the puppy for when they feel the pressure. This is not going to be like where you do a pop and you're trying to scare the puppy out of something you've deemed not acceptable. Because the problem there is your puppy won't understand why you're getting upset. They're going to just think that sometimes when you're near, bad things happen. And then they can start to associate those corrections with the things or the environment or the people or dogs or other critters in the environment too. So with the puppy in front of us, we're going to do a little pull and feed. And again, a little pull and feed. You'll see that his body language is not changing. I'm not making him feel nervous or scared to come into my space as I'm pulling on the gear ever so slightly and feeding for that engagement into me. Then what you'd end up doing is, after doing a few of these moments with him coming into your space, you would be walking, and let's say the puppy pulls ahead and there was pressure. When he feels it, he comes back into your space and you feed for that. So we would, for example, anytime he feels tension, try to help him check back in by coming back to you. So with my guys, even on a longer training lead, if they get to the end of it and they feel pressure, they do a little U-turn and head back towards me for a check-in. So right now, Mr. B is not really pulling away because I've been creating a lot of great value in being near my leg. So, but obviously if there was a big distraction, like let's pretend there was something off in the distance, and right there, if he feels, yes, the gear, and he felt the lead come and become tense, that would mean come check in. So, but I'm not pulling back as he's pulling forward. So view it like the tap on the shoulder, where if you have someone tapping your shoulder, so like right here, yes. If someone's tapping you, but they never tell you what they want, you're just going to ignore them or get annoyed by their constant tapping. If though, for example, when someone taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, do you mind doing this thing for me? Thanks so much. It's communication. So I'm not saying leash pops are communication. That's more of a trying to startle or scare the puppy out of something. This is when your puppy feels pressure or tension in equipment. It means come back to the handler for a check-in. So let's say, for example, I know he's been very food driven. So I'm going to just like pretend to toss something. So right here, he comes to the end, there's pressure. Yes. I'm going to feed him for that. I don't want to be continuously jostling him, but right here, yes. Notice how he feels the tension and he comes back. So again, now we could be meandering. He comes to the end. Ooh, yeah, smart man. So notice how he barely felt any pressure there and instantly came back to me for a little paycheck. So this is how you build up leash pressure. So then when you're going for that practice walk in your yard or your driveway or that safer, softer bubble, you could be walking and let's say your puppy does go and blow past you and they get a little distracted. If he pulls, I'm not pulling back. I would wait for him to get to the end of the leash and then see if he comes back to check in. If let's say he gets to the end and there's still a lot of tension, so let's say he was pulling this whole time and he didn't do that, good job, sir. I would then walk down my leash, which let's say, for example, so I'm going to do something where it might create that pull because there's going to be food and I will let him go get it. But I want to show you how you can walk down your leash to then help your puppy redirect for a second. So let's say, for example, I'm going to have an item off to the side. So like right here, there's tension. I would walk down my leash, get to my puppy, and then redirect him to help him from pulling. So like right here, I know there's going to be that snack off to the side. This is not a leave it exercise. So right here, yes. And I might help him if he was struggling, but I'm going to let him go grab that snack because normally we do find he's allowed to go grab them. So he's doing just fine. But I wanted to show you when there's tension, as opposed to pulling back on him, I try to redirect him or bring him into my space. So leash pressure can be really helpful because then when your puppy starts to feel pressure, they start to feel that connection. So like right here, and we would wait for him to hone in and come on back to our bubble. So very nice. But if let's say Mr. B didn't respond, that's where you could say his name. You can maybe do the little kissy noise. If he has another slogan he responds well to, try that. So, but now I want to try a little bit with some leave-its with him and see how he does. So let's say, for example, trash items. Maybe we will try my little plastic bag that has just some old stuff in it. Like it was previous acorns, but they've been so pulverized by being sort of dropped over and over, they've become powder. So if I'm going to be doing this all by myself, like this was just you practicing, I'd recommend to pick a soft bubble, like for example, your kitchen, your living room, somewhere where you can practice on gear as well. The reason I did a little find it for Mr. Handsome over here is I didn't want him to see me throw the thing and then go to jostle himself to go grab it as I'm tossing or planting the no item. So leave it should always be off limits. So a leave it item is nothing that he's going to play with later or something he's going to go engage with or something he's going to go eat. So if you've done leave it's as in leave it and then go eat it a few moments later, that I find is really confusing. Because if, let's say you said leave it, so right here we go leave it, yes. I'm going to feed for ignoring and disengaging from the thing. So if the leave it's have equaled wait a moment and then go eat it, what happens when you drop pills and your puppy's in the habit of going and eating the leave it eventually, he might be like, you know what, I'm just going to go try it anyway. So right here, we're going to go near enough, leave it, yes, and then feed for that disengagement. So in the beginning, I'm going to make sure that if, for example, we're trying these leave-its, that they're not going to be so hard that if your puppy were to get close, nice, he can't actually make contact with the thing. If you're getting so close that your puppy is able to reach it and all you're doing is squealing leave it in the distance as they're consuming the product, I don't think he's learning what that leave it means because he's thinking that leave it might be you squeal in the distance and then I will go ahead and eat that thing while you're having a hard time while he's consuming the product. So you also don't want to sound spooky. So some folks have sounded like what I like to call it is their possessed voice, where they're trying to really get the somehow across the pup that touching that thing is really bad and that you would get in trouble. But remember that startling or scaring your puppy out of behavior doesn't teach them what not to do. It just teaches them that while you're nearby, it could be dangerous to try things. So right here, as we're passing by the leave it item, I'm also feeding him for not checking it out. So all these moments where he's honing in on me or he's staying by my leg or he's doing a nice job, I'm going to feed him for that. So let's say I'm going to go towards my leave it. So right here, gorgeous. He could care less right now because he's busy working. So if, let's say this was getting a little bit more challenging, I'm going to try to do a little pass by right there, leave it. Yes. And sorry if I'm not perfectly in camera shot. I'm pretty sure you can see him with his no item. So right here, nice. So if he ignores it and checks back in, I feed for that response too. But you'll see that I'm not yanking him across the room or pulling him away from the item. So right here, I might go leave it. And if he gets a little stuck, ready? Find it. So sometimes we tend to get really flustered because the puppies have typically grabbed for items and have tried to eat them or play with them or break them. So one of my favorites is, remember these find its, ready? Can be a great way to redirect your puppy onto a better option. So oopsie poopsie, let's say we got way too close to leave it. He's checking it out. He's maybe put it in his mouth, as opposed to going right into, ready, Bernie? Nice, great name recognition. So as opposed to going right into yelling and squealing and trying to rip it from his jaws, I would go right into a little find it. So let's say, oh no, like let's say I got really close to my leave it item and he's about to go check it out and put it in his mouth. Bernie, find it. I build in that ignoring it and moving away to do a find it has more value than checking out the thing. So that's another great way to sometimes practice this letting go of something. So a lot of times, ready, Burn? We do want to practice the grabbing and letting go of items. Ready, Bernie? Yeah, nice name recognition. So we want to practice being able to grab and let go. Ready? Leave it. Yes. Because if your babe has not done enough practice with items he can have, ready, Bernie, this way. So if your babe hasn't done much practice with taking and dropping of items he can play with, he's going to have a really hard time letting go of things he shouldn't have. So this is where the toy exchange game, ready? Nice. So right there, he felt the pressure on the leash and checked in. So, but if your babe hasn't done much with the toy exchange game, I would recommend it highly to go take a peek-see and try it out with him. Because we want our puppy, ready? Leave it. Yes. But we want our puppy to practice the skills we'd like him to master for later with things he's able to practice with first. So what I mean by that is if your babe doesn't even know what it's like to let go of something, he may have a really hard time letting go of things he shouldn't have. So for example, if leave it items are really challenging and your babe is constantly playing with a leave it item, we may for right now have to do a little bit of a better job preventing the rehearsal of swiping inappropriate items. With then shoes and toys he's allowed to have, you'd want to practice while he's playing with one thing. Like he's got the cow toy, you rotate and you ask him to go for the tuggy, or you ask him to drop it and he goes and does a find it. Or he drops it and you feed him for that letting go. But if your babe can't let go of things he should have, how is he going to let go of things he shouldn't? So if a leave it does end up going into his mouth, ready, Bernie, then we want to make sure that he also gets to rehearse letting go by doing a drop it, give, or out. So I'm just going to, ready, Bernie, we'll do a couple little find its with some name recognition or some recall just to give him a little breather. Bernie, yes, brilliant boy. Ready, we'll do another little find it. So, but if he's struggling with anything, obviously check in, but I would highly recommend to break it down into little skills. So if he still, again, doesn't always do a great job letting go of items he's allowed to have, ready, find it. He's like, I don't know where you threw it. Ready, right here, Burns. There you go. So if he's not practicing what you'd like him to learn prior to needing it, that's going to be crucial for him to be successful in the real world later. So, but we'll give Mr. B a little break from some of these leave-its and some of the other lovely skills he was working on, and we'll do a little bit of some other fun stuff. Good job, sir. But he's doing such a good job. So he's a brilliant man.